The sound of the future wasn't born in Berlin nightclubs or Tokyo's neon alleyways. It started in Detroit, the same city that once built the world's cars, then watched its factories fall silent. Picture this. In the bleak wake of Detroit's industrial collapse, just outside the city, 3 teenagers in the suburb of Belleville began layering strange, machine-driven rhythms in their basements. What they made was haunting. Hard edges, synthetic pulses, and music that felt more like technology than tradition. This is the paradox. In a place defined by loss and emptiness, techno, music fueled by optimism for what comes next, first took shape. Here's the question. Why did Detroit become the world's laboratory for electronic music? What was it about this city, this exact geography, this exact moment, that made it possible for 3 black kids from the edge of Detroit to engineer a new global sound? You can feel the tension in every beat. It's mechanical, relentless, like the assembly lines these teenagers grew up around, now silent save for the echo of machines. Yet, beneath that machinery, something deeply human hums through. The world knows the sound. Most have no idea where it comes from, or why only Detroit could have made it. If you want to know how hope can grow from emptiness, and how a fading city gave us the music of the future, you have to follow that pulse back to Belleville and Detroit. To understand why techno emerged in Detroit, you have to see what Detroit was before the first drum machine played a note. In the middle of the 20th century, Detroit was the country's mighty industrial heart, a symbol of prosperity built on the auto industry. Millions of Americans, including many black families from the South, migrated north for factory jobs with the promise of stability. Belleville, a small suburb southwest of the city, was one refuge for those seeking a quieter existence on the edge of Detroit's roar. As the decades passed, prosperity faded. The oil crisis, global competition, and automation hollowed out Detroit's factories by the late 1970s. What was once the engine that built America became known for its abandoned buildings, economic hardship, and shrinking population. The city's population fell as work evaporated. Soon enough, even the music scene felt changed. Motown had left for Los Angeles, and the soul of Detroit seemed to be leaving too. Here's the strange part. When industries close, people often scatter, and communities splinter. By the early 1980s, the city's downtown streets were marked by urban decay. In Belleville, just as its own residents felt the aftershocks of Detroit's decline, a different sort of gathering began. 3 teenagers, Juan Atkins, Derek May, and Kevin Saunderson, met in junior high. They weren't drawn together just by music, but by the experience of growing up in a region defined by change and uncertainty. Their world was both stifling and charged, with alienation, but also with possibility. The tension of Detroit's transformation would shape everything that followed, and the city's vacant spaces, abandoned factories, empty night streets became the canvas onto which a new sound could be projected. That sound would ultimately echo back around the world. So how did the cold, empty streets of Detroit lead to the invention of one of the world's most influential genres? This is the story of musical ingredients converging at exactly the right moment. Juan Atkins, Derek May, and Kevin Saunderson, friends since junior high in Belleville, were shaped by the musical backdrop of their youth. Their parents had experienced Motown's golden era, but they themselves reached for something beyond soul or funk. The shift started when Juan Atkins, who'd grown up playing guitar and bass in funk and garage bands, bought his first synthesizer at age 15, a Korg MS-10. Atkins's fascination with electronics led him to radio as well. He tuned in to Charles' The Electrifying Mojo, whose late-night shows introduced Detroit teens to music far outside the city's boundaries. Kraftwerk, Devo, Gary Newman, and Telex. Atkins would drive through Detroit, playing tapes filled only with these European synth pioneers. The Belleville Three, as they're now known, started composing new music in their basements, layering mechanized drum machine beats with funk bass lines and icy synthesizer melodies. Influences collided. Kraftwerk's robotic precision met the spirit of Parliament and Prince, merged with the relentless drive of Chicago house. But Detroit's teenagers made the sound their own, taking the synthetic feel of German electropop and the groove of Black American funk, and turning absence into presence. Their tracks pulsed with a strict 4/4 rhythm, emphasizing rhythm over melody, and rarely used vocals. Records show these pioneers began with affordable technology. The Roland TR-808 and TR-909 drum machines became their principal tools. These machines, meant for practice, not performance, gave a uniquely hard, precise edge. Atkins and his early bandmate Rick Davis released Alleys of Your Mind on Cybotron in 1981, selling 15,000 copies, a local hit. After Cybotron, Atkins recorded as Model 500, releasing tracks such as No UFOs in 1985, widely considered the first true techno production. Kevin Saunderson and Derek May soon released their own tracks under aliases like Inner City and Rhythm is Rhythm, pushing boundaries with each single. But the human story isn't just in the music. The Belleville Three weren't working in a vacuum. Their scene was inseparable from Detroit's local parties. The prep parties that catered to suburban black youth seeking a different sound from downtown's R&B. They brought their tapes, spun records as Deep Space Soundworks, and tested new tracks. Clubs like the Music Institute became laboratories for this sound. The club's brief life in 1988-89 was pivotal, a space where innovation thrived. It's here Derek May's Strings of Life exploded, becoming a dance anthem and eventually crossing the Atlantic to ignite the UK house explosion. Why was the sound so different? It consciously rejected Motown's legacy, embracing instead a futuristic, sometimes sci-fi vision of music as a force for transformation. Atkins absorbed the futurist writings of Alvin Toffler, and the music echoed with hope, sometimes bleak, about technology and society. The tracks radiated a sense of being caught between eras, framed by fading machinery, yet reaching restlessly for the future. Even the terminology the artists used, names like Cybotron and Model 500, reflect a conscious engagement with the idea of machines, cybernetics, and a new technological society. This wasn't just a local quirk. The pulse born in Detroit would radiate outward, reshaping dance floors worldwide. That tension becomes audible. Detroit techno isn't just dance music. It's a laboratory of dreams, engineered from loss. The world would soon hear its pulse. But why Detroit? Why not Chicago, Paris, or New York? Geography shaped the sound in surprising ways. Detroit had the empty spaces of a post-industrial landscape, and its isolation from the music industry mainstream gave its creators freedom to experiment, away from the glare of commercial trends. The city's remnants of grandeur, the vast assembly plants, vacant office buildings, old car lots, offered not just physical space, but also a psychic atmosphere. The abandoned factories became both relics and inspiration, echoing as silent collaborators in a music built from machine rhythm. Detroit's location mattered. It was close enough to Chicago for creative exchange. Detroit DJs and producers visited Chicago's house clubs, absorbing the innovations of Frankie Knuckles and Ron Hardy, and brought those influences home. But while house music found its groove in Chicago, Detroit pushed for the unknown. The resulting techno was more mechanical, more abstract. You could hear in its relentless beats the restless pulse of a city in flux. Here's another twist. Detroit, once the epicenter of Motown, a genre all about lush arrangements and soul vocals, deliberately turned away from slickness. The Belleville Three and their circle found power in stripping music down to its machinery. They used drum machines and sequencers, technology available in that place at that time, to engineer a different future. The Music Institute Club, open for less than 2 years, became a kind of temple. Upstairs, raw and cavernous, packed with dancers and DJs who felt they were inventing something entirely new. Migration, too, shaped the sound's DNA. Detroit's black middle class, itself the product of great migration journeys from the American South, brought a legacy of both resilience and aspiration. The children of these migrants, living on the city's edge in Belleville, fused European synth-pop with American funk and the hard reality of post-industrial America. The sound that emerged, shimmering, relentless, and futuristic, was only possible because of Detroit's unique collision of history, place, and people. Here's the receipt. The 1988 UK compilation, Techno, the new dance sound of Detroit, didn't just export tracks. It set the sound on a global map, with Detroit named at the center. Once the world heard it, the city's industrial vastness became inspiration for an entire movement. Even today, the question echoes, why Detroit? The answer lives in its geography, its migrations, and its machines. If Detroit techno was born of local circumstance, its echoes are global and still growing. The first surge of Detroit tracks caught the ear of British DJs and club kids, who pressed them into the heart of the rave movement. Strings of Life wasn't just a club favorite. Frankie Knuckles recalled the crowd's reaction as electric, a new power surging on the dance floor. With the 1988 UK release of Techno, the new dance sound of Detroit. Detroit's sound became part of Europe's identity almost overnight, where it fused with acid house and nurtured genres like trance, electronica, and hardcore. The influence is everywhere. Today's electronic music, from Berlin to Sao Paulo, traces a direct line back to the basement studios of Belleville. The subgenres, electro, breakbeat, minimal, jungle, gabber, owe debts to Detroit's raw experimentalism. But remarkably, techno's own scene in Detroit still carries weight. The city hosts the Movement Electronic Music Festival, which began as the Detroit Electronic Music Festival in 2000, keeping its identity alive at the center of techno culture. There's another twist. Even as the genre morphed and fragmented, reverence for its Detroit origins grew. Juan Atkins, Derek May, and Kevin Saunderson are still revered as the originators, their early recordings collected and reissued worldwide. Techno today is celebrated not just as party music, but as a philosophy, one that saw music as a reflection and transformation of urban reality. The relentless human-meets-machine pulse Atkins described as music that sounds like technology, not technology that sounds like music, still shapes new waves of producers. The world builds on Detroit's blueprint. Here's the answer to the question we started with. Detroit built the music of the future because of everything it lost. The absence of easy jobs and fading industry created space, physical, emotional, and creative, for something radically new. The pulse of techno is both a tribute and a challenge, a sound born from emptiness, insisting on possibility. In basements and clubs, amid the ruins of assembly lines, Detroit's youth engineered not just dance music, but an argument that the future could belong to them, too. Their sound, relentless, machine-driven, yet hauntingly human, still spreads from this one city to dance floors across the world. That's the story hiding inside every beat, a reminder that new worlds can be built from old parts, and that sometimes the future arrives not with a melody, but with a relentless, hopeful thump, coming straight out of Detroit.